Good afternoon, giving me an echo, but welcome to the January 16th special board meeting. I would like to note that Dr. Stern will be here shortly. She's on her way, and that Mrs. Sagali Stebag is in Israel and will be joining us via Zoom. I would like to get an approval of the agenda, please.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor? Say aye. Thank you very much. I don't believe there's any public comment. Is that correct? No public comment. Thank you. Okay. Pursuant to a recent order from Governor Newsom, we are meeting today to discuss that impact on our school district. And I'm going to give the microphone over to Dr. Briggy, who has been in contact not only with the local education association, the other superintendents around the district, and the County Board of Education to go over some of the implications for our school district. If there's anything else, we will ask questions at that time. So, Dr. Briggy, you're on.
Thank you, President Marcus, and good evening to everybody. I do want to just begin with our heartfelt concern and reaching out to our educators and our students throughout our area. There are so many people in our community that are reaching out, and we are doing that as well. And so while we're getting a direction from LA County and also from the state of California, we are also doing our part as a community partner. As you know, we were able to reach out to the Palisades Charter High School Administration, and we house them here at our district office. And so we're having some ongoing conversations. They used a room today for their tech team. And so just kind of behind the scenes, I want the board to know and our community to know that this is our profession and our family, and we're reaching out to do what we can to help one another. The executive order that's in front of you is something that came without notice the night before last in various ways. That was shared with superintendents. It was shared with us without any direction or any guidance, so I do want to just let the board know that some of the information from the executive order has been somewhat delayed as we try to understand and provide the right procedures going forward. As you know, we are a community-funded school district, and so and for those that are not aware, Basic Aid School District, that we are funded differently, and so we have to look at this as an opportunity to certainly on an academic level and a personal level for our students and our families, but we also have to look at it from an operational perspective, and that's our responsibility, is a complete 360 for all students, families, and for our own families and students that are currently enrolled.
Can I make just one quick
Sure.
comment to what you said? I just want to clarify to everybody what a basic aid district is. A basic aid district gets all of their funding, but for the most part, from taxes, from property taxes. And with that in mind, there is no increase in our funding for every child that we do bring in extra from those that are already here. So the money that we get is split against more students if we take in more students. So by bringing new students does not mean we get more money.
And I think that people sometimes forget that, the human part of us is to reach out immediately and to, ensure that we're going to be part of the resolution to keep that continuity of education for kids. And we are doing that. There's also the part that we have a responsibility as well to our own community to ensure that we keep things going, and that the operational end of that we're meeting the needs that we have as a school district. So I want to thank the cabinet for jumping on this at moment's notice. to start to collect data and information so that we can look at what the impact is to us as we start to look at the order and then start to look at enrolling students. And so they've put everything on hold, and I just want to thank them. We've been in conversation for the last really 48 hours or less to be able to provide this information, and also our principals at each of our schools as well. So a couple things I want to, you can see on the agenda, I have enrollment and attendance, facilities, resources, staffing, long-term impacts. This is not for us to go through one by one. These are all interconnected. Everything that we do is interconnected, and so you can't do one thing without it impacting another. I can tell you just very quickly from the executive order some of those key points and some of those implications. Some of them do not affect us directly because we are not a school district that was directly impacted by the wildfires. And so there are things in the executive order that we don't have to follow, like some of the instructional time waivers. That's something that is for those schools that were impacted. We are impacted in that we have to look at some of the enrollment and some of the class size flexibilities, the residency piece and the enrollment. We are fortunate that while some school districts are having to look at temporary facilities, we're having conversations with people to try to help them out with their facilities as well. There are school districts in the order that have to have extensions for record transfer and reporting. We're fortunate that we do not have to do that. But we are now in a position where the biggest impact to our district is the enrollment piece and placing students appropriately. But I also want people to know it's not just that operational end, it is the impact to our facilities, our current students and teachers that is really going to play out in the next week or so. I think it's important to also know that with the order, if a student or a family has been displaced, if they've been displaced by their school, not being in a place where they can attend or their home, that the order expects that they have immediate enrollment in school districts. And so we are starting to collect that information. We're starting to collect that data. We also know that there are schools that are trying to find places, and so there's a lot of back and forth right now as far as school districts that are finding locations to have school because they have their staff, they're getting resources, and so we're working with all of those families. So I think the most important thing for our community and for the board is that we are having conversations, we're collecting information from our families, and again, we're collecting whether they're displaced because they no longer have a home to go to, or that it's been so severely damaged that they cannot live there, but also then if their academic institution, their school is not a place where they can attend. That is what we collect. When people come in, we get that information from students, and then we will then be processing the enrollments. That's probably the most important thing for you to know is that is taking place, and we are collecting that information. We did need to hear from the governor. We did need to I had a meeting today about how this is going to happen, how this is processed. What's left out, just to be completely honest and frank, is that the funding part is not, and not to sound heartless and not to sound, that we're not doing everything we can, because we are, but we also have a responsibility, and one of them is financially. And so we know that most school districts in the state of California, the money will follow the student, and that happens if you're not a basic aid or community funded school district. And so the superintendents that are superintendents of school districts like ours, that's community funded, are working together to ensure that that money follows the student and wherever the student goes. this executive order is a temporary enrollment for students for the 2024-2025 school year. And I'm sure that there'll be more information that comes in as students get settled. And so I'm happy to answer any questions or if there's any conversation from our board. We are spending a great deal of time looking to see where there is space and to appropriately place students. I will say, before I turn it over, the place that that might be the most impacted is at the high school level, and that we already know that we have students that are in virtual learning that would prefer not to be, and so you know, it's at the high school level. It takes a lot for a student to register, and then that transcript from their previous school has to be evaluated, and then like classes need to be found and then placed in those classes. And again, it's temporary for the rest of the year, but I think one thing that we're concerned about is that student that comes back until their school has a plan. And I just want to assure families that, you know, everybody's helping. So places are going to land on their feet. These communities are responding, and so it's a big move to register, enroll, evaluate classes, start school, and then if and when a school then has a physical place that they leave and go back. And so that's, you know, I would ask, you know, families to really think about that decision and not make that quick decision, because I think that's very hard on the student as well. So, but it's also a lot of transition for, you know, our staff. And so certainly we want what's best for students, but there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that I just want people to be aware of.
Yeah, Dr. Breggy, thank you. And my colleagues, I'm glad that we're all sitting here together and learning together about what the executive order says. And thank you to the cabinet for joining us. First, I want to acknowledge our community. And by our community, I mean all of Southern California, Pacific Palisades, Malibu, Eaton area, Altadena, Pasadena. I don't think anybody in Los Angeles has gone without knowing at least somebody who's lost it all in the last 7 days, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. I think we're here because we want to help students and we want to make sure that all students are educated. I myself, my in-laws have lost their entire life in the Palisades, and I know firsthand what a lot of families are going through. And I'll say last Tuesday, I was FaceTiming with my mother-in-law at 11:30 in the morning, and she was showing me the first fire, and she was paralyzed. And I was shouting at her, "Get up, get out, please get your medicine, your passports, you know, any family heirlooms, and get going." And she, you know, she ultimately had to leave her car on the street, which got bulldozed, so fire people could, you know, get in there. And her face has been all over AOL News ever since, you know. And so even though we're in Beverly Hills, we have a lot of friends and family all over Southern California that I think we all are intimately aware of the heartbreak that's going on. As far as the decision-making of this board goes, I do believe that it's very important that whatever decision we do end up making is one that we don't take lightly and is one that's done with a lot of foresight, because we don't necessarily want to bankrupt another high school, another school. We want to make sure that that community has a fighting chance of moving from their virtual setup, which is supposed to start on Monday of next week, to potentially an in-person setup, of which I understand they're looking at more than a handful of really good alternatives. And it seems like a few of the elementary schools have already been redirected to other LAUSD schools. So that's very, you know, comforting to hear. I have a few dilemmas. My first dilemma is I would be interested to know how many students can we comfortably admit. I know you have to go back and take a look at the numbers, but comfortably admit, and then what is that going to mean as we gain new residents in the city of Beverly Hills. My understanding is that as we are sitting here today at 4:30-ish on a Thursday afternoon, the City Council of Beverly Hills is also having a special meeting wherein they're discussing a lift of the short-term rental moratorium that they generally have. I'm generalizing. And I think that my understanding, I looked at their agenda, is that they're lifting it, but they're lifting it only for folks that have been displaced. So then what does that mean for us? Let's say, I'm just giving a hypothetical. Let's say at the high school we had 100 spots comfortably. Do we welcome students up to 50% of those spots and then allocate the other 50 to new move-ins? I don't necessarily know the answer, but these are the questions that are running through my head. And so I don't think that we're here necessarily to make a decision tonight. I think we're here to start the conversation and let our community know that this is on our mind as much, maybe more, than it is on everybody else's mind. The responsibility is one that I know we all feel in a very heavy and real-time way. And so hopefully this is going to be the first of not too many conversations before we end up making a decision. I do think that if we make a decision, it has to be something that is in a regular open session that has at least given the public a true advance notice so that we can welcome public comment, even though we're welcoming public comment today, but this is a 24-hour notice period, and so you guys know me, I'm very into the process and procedure. So that's where I am today. I have a lot of questions. I do want our team to go back and look at our staffing, look at our union contract, look at the spaces we have. I agree that in the high school level, it's super complicated. I always call the high school a jungle because you have kids in AP classes, you have kids that are needing to meet high school requirements to graduate, you have other students who are needing UC requirements to graduate, and so on and so forth. It just gets more and more complicated. I will say that I myself personally am the most concerned with students who have lost their homes. And I understand that there are a lot of students that are going to be going on Zoom Monday of next week, but my concern is the students that have lost their homes. And so I'm just interested to know if you can let us know who you're hearing in that regard, hearing from in that regard.
Sure.
That population is the one that concerns me the most. Mm-hmm. The kids that have lost their school and lost their homes.
And we are already starting to collect that information through Mrs. Collins-Williams' department, and in finding out just if this is somebody that has lost their home or this is somebody who has been displaced from their school, just so that we have that information. The executive order, however, is not leaving that up to a board decision, that is immediate enrollment. And so that's for both displaced, whether it's your home or it's your school.
Well, technically, I just have a question about
Sure.
displaced from your school let's put Pali High at the forefront for
Sure.
a moment, because I think that's the one that we've been getting a lot of comments about. Those students have a school. It's 2,400 students, maybe more. Is it 3,000?
It's just under 3,000 students.
Okay, so close to 3,000 students.
Right.
So they have a school option which is on Zoom. Am I understanding correctly? And that's meant to start this coming Monday.
Right. But for the order, if you have been displaced from your physical school, that is giving the decision up to that family on where that student can go.
So if they don't want to Zoom, for example, under any circumstances, they have
Yes.
the option to go and look for
Yes.
another campus.
Yes.
Let's hear from some
Yeah.
of the other members of the
Yeah,
board,
I
okay?
have a few thoughts. Or, no, you go
I was
ahead.
going to go down to to my friend, our student rep.
I had a question about would the staff of the, like, let's say Pali High School, would their staff, their teachers also be coming to our school if they need to?
It's a really good question. Their staff is, they have their own graduation requirements. They have their own, employment in HR procedures. So they will not be coming to our school. They, as Mrs. Manicherry said, they do have a school. I mean, it'll be a virtual school until they can find a physical place. But they've been technically displaced from their physical site of their school. So while those teachers will be doing Zoom, and those counselors will be doing Zoom, and they will be all of the services as if we were back in COVID will happen. But it's still a student that's considered to be displaced.
Any other questions, Remy?
Not right now, but I'll think of some more.
Okay, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you so much. I would love to start by thanking immensely the men and women at the Beverly Hills Fire Department. These people have risked their lives every day since this fire started to go up to the Palisades, up to Altadena, up to these other fires, where they are paid to protect us, but in the end, they are paid to protect everyone. And I just want to make sure that they are given the shout out and the respect that they deserve. I agree with everything that my colleagues are asking. I'd like to get into a little bit more granularity on the actual executive order, particularly this one line, Dr. Breggy, that says, local educational agencies are obligated to immediately enroll students who are now unhoused as a result of the fires throughout greater Los Angeles. The term unhoused is obviously kind of a misnomer because you might not have lost your house entirely, but your house might be in an evacuation area where you cannot go back to it. It could also just be in a physical state that you are one house in the middle of a block that's completely decimated and is not livable. So unhoused does not mean your house is gone.
Right.
And in the, what I would call very confusing, or if completely lack of direction of this document, have you spoken directly to the governor's office? Have you spoken to other colleagues at the state and county and even local level and gotten an understanding of kind of what their understanding of this is? Because obviously when you read it from the black and white, it's no matter who comes to our door, we take them.
Right.
No matter what.
Right.
Obligated. I've highlighted that word right here.
Yep.
What number are you looking at, Russell?
I'm on page 1, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, paragraph 5 of the executive order. And that's pretty, I mean, that's
Pretty direct.
to a lawyer, which I am not one, and this is not legal advice, but to a lawyer, that would say, I'm a parent, I'm here, you're obligated.
Can I
So
throw?
as a lawyer, I read it a little differently because to
That's
me,
why it's called an argument.
yeah.
That-
So to me, the whereases are kind of
Intention.
setting the stage, and then when it's like a resolution,
Sure.
right? So I looked at all the whereases as this is the landscape that we're in, and then I looked at the paragraphs that were numbered as the actual order.
Correct.
And so, okay, so good. So it's
True,
good that we're having
but
this
there are still
conversation.
99% of humans that aren't lawyers who can come to our doorstep and say, what about that?
Yep.
What does that mean?
Well, what did the governor's office say today?
Yeah, it was more of just a discussion about what the key points are. Tomorrow is really the first opportunity that we have to have a more one-to-one based on your school district. So that's an opportunity tomorrow morning. But it's happened so quickly where, this is a kind of a one-size-fits-all approach by this delivery without any warning. And then the school districts are so different in so many different ways that we all now are looking at it in our own individual ways. So it was a very general session today. And then tomorrow, it's more of a one-to-one based on our own school districts.
But isn't this paragraph a pre-existing law? So this is just reminding everybody that, for example, if somebody is homeless, they can come to Beverly Hills Unified and they can say, enrollment department, we have lost our home, or to Mr. Stewart's point, we are not allowed to go home because we are in the middle of Palisades and our house is the only one standing on the block, and we are not even able to get up there, and please enroll our student. So that's an unquestionable, undeniable fact. Am I right? Okay, so we've had some of the other school districts.
Can I add a
Yeah,
caveat?
of course.
Not to muddy the water,
Sure.
but I want the board to remember that Palisades is a charter school,
Yes.
meaning that students come from all over various areas to attend that school. So my home district may be Woodland Hills Elementary or High School District. I'm just making that up.
Right,
But
for example.
I'm attending Palisades High School via that independent charter. So I would argue that there's a stop gap between us and Pally.
One more.
But does it apply to the homeless?
Yes.
I
Because
mean,
if you look, it
and-
says we are urged, we are not ordered. If you look at number 5 and 6, under I hereby order, number 6, all LEAs are urged, not ordered, to extend every effort. So we just have to unpack what that looks like and what that means for us.
Yep.
Rochelle, what were you gonna ask? Mrs.
Well,
Marcus?
I was just going to point out what Mrs. Collins-Williams was saying, that with this district enrollment at 3,000 at that school, approximately only 700 students are in the Palisades area that could have been impacted by the fire. True, all 3,000 are now without a school.
Correct.
But 2,300 or thereabouts, I'm being really rough.
Could live by
They
a
are
resident school.
all over the city and county of LA. They have a permit to go to a school outside of their regular
They
permit.
chose to go to the
So they
charter.
are not, in a sense, displaced as far as those, yes, Palisades students I do feel very strongly about for that reason. But a student who has chosen to get a permit to go to Palisades High may live in
Uni High
Southeast
School,
LA.
Uni High School's district, high school zoning, they could return to Uni High School.
Or Studio City, or
Or Studio
et cetera.
City, or Inglewood.
And I think
or,
that-
you know,
Yeah, I
anywhere.
think that a lot of these,
Calabasas.
you want to finish, sir? You want to finish? I haven't said anything yet, but go ahead.
Well, that was my
Okay.
comment about that I was talking about.
Yeah, I
is
agree.
that they're not really, they are, yes, displaced in the sense that they can't go to Pali,
Their chosen school, yeah.
but they are from another school that they've been given a permit to go there. And that's, I
So they have a
question,
home school to return to.
yeah.
And,
So,
and if you look at the demographic of people who often choose to go to a charter, generally speaking, these are families who are like, look, a charter is not the given path. It's sort of like an offshoot of, I mean, it's still part of LAUSD, but it's, a lot of these families are innovative in the sense that, by golly, we're going to get in the car and we're going to drive, even though it's a good, 30-minute commute. So it does say a lot about the mobility of these families. But again, it brings up the question, which is, if only, let's say, 700 are those who actually live in Palisades, and 70% are those who live by, I mean, LAUSD is huge, has many, many schools. So it's very, I'm not saying this is necessarily where they have to go, but it's very likely that a good portion, a good percentage of those kids do live near, an LAUSD school. The other thing, too, is that after COVID, I know that LAUSD mysteriously lost a lot of kids. And my understanding is they have not regained that enrollment. I mean, there are quote-unquote empty spots, and they don't know where they went. A lot of these kids, 600,000, still have not, many of that have not enrolled. But the question is obviously without Carvalho's, sorry, is that the pronunciation? The superintendent's support, and I don't know how supportive he is. I mean, if he feels like, you know what, no, it's you're welcome to go wherever you want, or does he feel that he should outfit those schools that are, some of which are under enrolled? I know that Venice High is pretty, not vacant, but it does have a lot of spaces, given the drop-off in LAUSD enrollment. So I guess I'm asking you, are you aware of the temperature of the superintendent in his support in terms of where the kids go? Or do you think he's just saying, no, we're not going to make those schools habitable or usable, or what's his level of?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't spoken to him personally, but so I do know that he is encouraging students to find a place to go to school, and if it's in their attendance area, to be part of LAUSD. So that's I know for sure that he's not encouraging people to leave LAUSD.
But my understanding is that Pali is an independent charter school, so
It is.
there is no real relationship with LAUSD in the sense that Superintendent Carvalho and LAUSD's team does not oversee them.
No, I
their
think they
operation.
do.
Do they?
They
Yeah,
do.
they do. It's just, it's
They're
more
the-
that it's more
LAUSD
parent
is the authorizer of-
input.
He is authorized. Got you.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, that's a good
Yeah,
point that you
yeah.
make. So the homeschool should be the first school? Is that what?
I'm saying if you want to be efficient about this, I'm not making any judgment about where kids should or should not go. But if you're going to be efficient and you look at the fact that LAUSD has been crying foul since COVID, where are all the kids? It is something to look at that makes sense, especially if it would, instead of you commuting now to this charter school, suddenly, it's a mile away and kids can walk to school because it's their zoned school. However, people choose a charter school for very specific reasons, and people choose our district because we have a fantastic district. The larger question that I come down to is I think a lot of questions come down to high school kids versus elementary. Are we only talking about the possibility of the high school enrollees, or are we talking about any displaced student? I mean, I know the order is for any, but I just see it very differently because, and this is just a quick question, I think, Laura, maybe you can tell me, is it true that the instructional minutes that are required for each school or each grade level are being waived? In other words, like, it's being waived, right? So in other words, if
Yes.
they've been missed because of the fires and they continue, let's say for a while, they're at a staggered place where they, if you have a certain, half of the population can go Monday, Wednesday, and the rest goes, I'm just saying, that will not be a penalty against instructional minutes.
Correct. Or if you're displaced because school was closed for 2 weeks and you missed those 2 weeks of instruction, there's a waiver in place for the 24-25 school year.
And
for
the Zoom or Google Meets or Google Meets is considered instructional minutes? If it's
Yes,
done?
when
Okay,
it's
and
up and
as is
running.
independent study, or only if it, well, I'm sure it has certain requirements. But my point is that, I mean, what's great about older kids generally, and it's not perfect, and there's very few people who would say that the COVID experiment of remote learning was anything that was good for the kids, no. But there is some flexibility in terms of considering, if needed, a hybrid situation for some of these kids, if we are finding that, wow, this is really going to be hard, to meet our needs as well as to meet theirs. But I'm just saying, eventually the conversation should turn to which age and grade are we speaking of, because those are very different considerations.
But, wait, let me, I think there's something that needs to be brought up here that's very important to this whole discussion. And that is that the number, I believe it's number 7 on our whereas type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, if a valid collective bargaining agreement entered in between the local education association, which is us, and an exclusive bargaining representative of whatever, and that is our BHEA, as I'm going to be very blunt, we have limitations on how many students each teacher can have during the day.
For our agreement.
And we are in the elementary, I'm going to be very blunt, many of our elementary classes are between 1 and 2 students full of students. I don't have the numbers right now, but I know that we're going to get them. The problem starts to get, so that's a limiting factor. So do we have to start another class? Well, no, as we just mentioned, we are funded by basic aid. And nobody's going to give us more money if we have to hire a new teacher, and because we have an agreement with the local BHEA that they can only have so many kids in the class. And we can't violate that because we come under another problem then. So I'm looking at that as a thing. Now we move on to possibly middle school and high school. Middle school and high school, each teacher has a limit of 145 students, am I correct? Is that the number of students that they, at one time or another during the day
150?
that
For which, say that again?
classes in the middle, if I teach English at the middle school and I have 5
Yeah.
classes and you divide it up amongst however many students I get, I can never see more than 145 students.
So, and it's different whether if you're in PE, there's
Oh,
some,
yeah,
some
there's some-
variations to that, but that, generally, that's correct.
For
So
core,
if
for
that's the
core,
case,
it's
we cannot-
145 contacts per day
For middle school
for,
and.
and high school, for
And high
core
school.
subjects.
For
So-
core subjects.
So what do we do when we no longer can play? And these are core subjects because that's math,
right.
social studies, English, and science, et cetera. And we have to hire a new teacher. So if we have to do that, I think that is a consideration that needs to be considered because BHEA is the person or the group that controls how many students we can have in a class.
Yep. And Dr. Horvath has already reached out and had some conversations with President Katie Warren with BHEA, and so he's already starting those conversations. So, you know, what's really tough about this is like anything. It's about where, you know, when people enroll, where does that fall? There's some, because there's never anything where it's like, it's the same at every grade level. There's some grade levels that have, you know, more room than others. There's, we're tight in like 9th grade in some certain areas. And so, in 10th grade, it might be in a different academic area. So it really is gonna depend on as people come in, and this is just constantly watching and monitoring where students are and how this impacts, which we'll continue to do for the board. It just is all going to depend on the where.
What I'm saying is there is a limit to how far we can go there's a limit to how far we can go in this particular situation based on our agreement with our collective bargaining. That's what I'm trying to point out.
This is probably not like politically the most popular thing to say, but you know, this is very reflective of when we went through COVID-19, where an executive order is being placed on us, and it's every school district runs a little bit differently, but then we kind of figure it out as we go, and I'm not proud of that, and that's certainly not coming from our school district, because we'll adhere to these regulations. However, because we've learned how to react in these situations, that we're already starting to look at if this is going to impact us in a certain class size, or if this is going to impact us in the hiring, which we don't know that that's going to happen yet, but we know that we're going to have that information available so that we're already starting to pursue, and I know that Dr. Hasty as well, like we're already reaching out saying, you know, what about us? We are a community-funded school district, and so we're already starting to have those conversations about where's that funding coming for us. So we've learned how this works before, and now we're ahead of it. So I feel like we're in a better place now because we're already anticipating that we're going to need some additional funding, even though if we had to right now, we wouldn't be able to demonstrate that, but where this might end up is that there might be a place where there's some additional funding for teachers, and but we're not there yet, but we're already starting to reach out to people because that funding must be available to us as it is going to be for our other school districts that are not community funded.
And sorry, if I may add, to backtrack to how Palisades is a charter high school, I know that many students take buses to get to Palisades Charter High School. So does that mean if they were to become our responsibility, and I know on like the first page on the 7th, whereas it says it is necessary to provide additional flexibility to accommodate students,
Right.
would that mean we would have to provide transportation for those students?
As of right now, that's not something that they're saying we have to do. If there was a special education situation, we would have to look at that a little bit differently. You can certainly speak on that.
I agree with what Dr. Breggy just said for students who don't have IEPs.
Yeah.
However, students with IEPs, transportation can be included in their IEP as a related service. And in order for the student to, in order for the student to access their educational program. So we could, in fact, be obligated to transport a student from wherever they live to Beverly Hills and home, which would impact our budget very much so, as we currently do not have a lot of students receiving transportation via IEPs.
And sorry, yeah, so that would cause more of a budget problem. But then also, I'm not sure, but do we have an estimated time period of when Pali may reopen their schools?
Another great question. I've never seen so many people trying to help them, and it's really great to see that because after hosting their team here, their administrative team in this very room, and watching how much they care about their students and how much they want to keep their students together, they don't want to see that either. So they are working around the clock trying to find a location, trying to even come up with scenarios if grade levels are split up. They're doing everything that they can. So, and there's a lot of leads that are happening. So I would expect that before very long, in the next few days, that they will have a plan in place.
Yes, because this is like a hypothetical. Let's say Pali opens up again in school 2 months from now, and we already have taken in the responsibility of certain students from Palisades Charter or any other school that's been affected.
Right.
Would they be mandated to move back to their former school, or are they allowed to stay at our school for the remainder of the year?
So as of right now, they are saying for the 2024-25 school year, it's a temporary arrangement. So they are not stating at this point that these are students that would remain in your school district to continue to the next grade level or the next. This is for now to get kind of people reset in their homes.
Yeah, I understood that there was, for example, for Pali, and that's a great question, by the way, that there was a board meeting this week where the result was very optimistic, and then there was a town hall.
Yep.
There was or is today a
think it's
town
today.
hall, yeah, which is supposed to be very informative. I have one question, which is, what is the homeschool for Palisades 90272? Is that Venice?
Uni High. I believe it's University High School.
90272 is,
We'll have to look.
You mean for the students who would be actually zoned for Palisades?
yes.
Okay, we're gonna
Again,
look it up.
again, for me, it's back to the kids, they're all children
Yep.
who have lost their house and their school.
We're talking about the kids who actually live in 90272.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know,
Well, there's quite a few elementary schools and middle schools, right?
they got relocated. So for example, on the Palisades Hill.
Right.
There's Marquez Elementary,
Yep.
and then there's Palisades
Canyon, there's-
Charter Elementary. They're going to Brentwood Science Magnet. Already they went, I think it was yesterday, and Nora Sperry. So to your point about there being extra room on LAUSD campuses, it was great to see that they immediately pivoted those schools over with very little downtime. So that's, again, very comforting.
Great.
So,
In terms of the direction that you're looking for, and I guess we can't really make any directions other than the fact that it's, as I see it, as you're receiving students, it's on an individual, student by student who comes through the door, is that correct? And that they are coming in with their story or where they are and so on, and you're investigating and allowing them to fill out paperwork.
Yes.
So let's say what would happen if somebody walked in the door tomorrow from Pali High, and to give them an idea of what might happen, I think that might be a scenario we could look at. As a student comes in, there's different things here. We have a student who comes there and they're as a permit student, they live somewhere else. We have a student that comes that actually lives in Pali and is they don't have a home and they don't have a school. And so a student who walks in the door tomorrow, what is going to happen?
So just want to clarify one thing. They're a school of choice, so no one lives there. They are all permitted either from within LAUSD or outside of LAUSD to go to that school. So it's not like there's a cadre of kids who Palisades High School was their home school. So they're all there through the permit process. But we
They
do
all have a home school, in other words.
either in
No,
LA
the kids
or.
that actually live in Pali don't live there, that's their home school, isn't it?
No. Yep.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you.
Since the executive order came out, or sorry, I'll even backtrack, since the fire began, how many families and students have attempted to enroll so far?
That's
And
a great question.
yeah.
Mrs. Collins-Williams is documenting each of those.
So we have a couple of different scenarios. We have several people who have come in who are saying that they came from Palisades High School and they are now residing with family members here in the district. We have about 25 of those scenarios. We need to have some conversation about how we look at that and how we verify that. And then also we'll need direction from the board or guidance from the board on if they have, so let's say, an LA address, but they were attending Palisades, how do we want to proceed? So we have about 25 people who are saying they're co-residing with someone in Beverly Hills. We have about another 27 who have expressed interest, and they're all different grade levels. A lot of high school students, but also several elementary level students as well.
Has anyone walked into your office or called you and said, we've lost our home? Or our home is in a burn zone?
It's more that they were evacuated or that they were in the area. And I don't have anyone that has said we don't have like a home that was
Okay.
burned down
So
or
I just want to
lost.
clarify. So in other words, we will, of course, comply with the law. And so if somebody comes to us in Mr. Stewart's whereas, paragraph 5 on page 1 of the order, that's a separate issue which we will always comply with the law.
Agreed.
And there's no question that BHUSD is compliant with the law. No, it's in the whereases, because this is a pre-existing. If you are unhoused, and you, for example, park your car in Beverly Hills, you can go to BHUSD. And our hearts go out to that specific cohort of people who are the worst off.
But I think just to go back to what you had kind of taught me in my original speech was the whereases are the setup and the
Order.
the ordered that are the actual guidance. You have a whereas obligated and a ordered to urged.
Yeah.
So we're demanding you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, great summary.
Yeah, well, I try. So just to go back to the question I asked previously, of those 25 families or kids that have been asked to be enrolled, how many of them are just currently domiciling with friends versus grandparents or actual family members that might have qualified under the permitting process if we so expanded that?
So that's what my team is in the process of determining. We have 4 people who've actually completed the actual enrollment process, meaning they've given all the documents, they've signed the affidavit, we have that information. We have several others that are at various stages of getting the information, because we still need, if at all possible, transcripts, immunization records, things like that. So they're incomplete, but we are working on getting that information. So 2 students started attending our schools today, and then we have another 2 who have completed the process but have not started attending, and then we have another, let's say 18 or so that, or 19 or so that are in various stages of that process.
And what threshold did those 2 that have already begun meet to get the green light to join our district in the last day?
So they were displaced from Palisades High School, and they are co-residing with family members here in Beverly Hills.
Which obviously, sorry.
I was just going to say, they could be displaced from anywhere, though, from this order, right? It's not just that they're displaced from Palisades. If they choose, if they so choose, if they lived in Pasadena and
Right.
so chose to
Right.
come here, we need to honor that.
Correct, but
Okay.
I was asking specifically about
But is it
the 2
permanent,
that.
or do they, let's say these students are living with grandparents, and then next week, everybody in Bel Air can go back to Bel Air. Are they gonna go back to live with parents?
So
I
it
just wanna
depends on how. Mm-hmm.
caution you, because I know, trust me, at 7 PM on Friday night, I had our best friend's 7-year-old knocking on my door,
Mm-hmm.
and they stayed through the weekend with us when Bel Air and Brentwood and so on was evacuated to be cautious, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that they came to us, but they went home on Sunday night.
Right.
And so I just want to have a complete understanding, and I want to have an assurance from your office that you will be verifying that they continue to reside with whoever they're saying that they're residing with. And I
Absolutely.
know a lot of moms that say, oh yeah, no big deal, and dads, but on day 3, they're going to want their child to live in their home.
Right.
And so I just
Absolutely.
please-
We are physically verifying that they are residing where they say they are living. And we will continue to do spot checks to make sure they are still there. And I had a meeting with my team prior to us coming in today. The people who are actually pending, we're going to go out and see the setup before we finalize the enrollment.
I think also, too, we cannot forget the X factor of the meeting that is more than likely happening as we speak
Yeah.
at City Hall, which, I mean, it's hard to live or work in the city of Beverly Hills and not know someone who's in the real estate industry. I know plenty of them who are aggressively, shopping homes and apartments and all that. If they do lift the moratorium on short-term leasing, you could literally have 100 families signing a lease tomorrow, which then legally puts us in a different situation to where
Yeah.
now they are residents.
Yeah, that's why
Which
I-
could almost eliminate everyone on our waiting list as of today. Because we might not be.
Theoretically, yes. I just want to remind the board that co-residency was already something we had in place prior to this order. So we do have a few students every year that go through this process and complete this process and complete the affidavit and have it notarized, et cetera. So this was already
Board
pre-existing.
policy, yeah.
Yes.
But Mrs. Collins-Williams, is there a definition, or as Mr. Stewart said, a threshold to define residency as 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week?
Yes, in our recent update of the board policy 5000s, we indicated a minimum of 5 days a week, Sunday through Thursday, minimum.
Got it.
And with separated homes, or how does that work if it's a divorced mom and dad?
Yes, still, the student needs to be there, unless there's a court order that gives some other arrangement. And then usually those situations are discussed at my level with the team and the parent, and we determine whether or not the student is eligible to attend our schools.
Okay. So, 5 nights a week.
Yes, so if we do a random visit and they're not there, we may go back. We'll try multiple times, but then if not, there's a conversation about whether or not they are actually truly residing at the address given.
Yeah. For me, I can understand any parent who does not want their student sitting back on Zoom.
Yeah.
Those were some heartbreaking days for all of us. And so I don't detract from a parent's zeal, you know, to get their student what serves their student the best and the most. I have my eye on those kids who've lost their homes, personally. And I think we all have a duty to leave the door open for those students who need us the most and who maybe would turn Beverly Hills into their new home, you know? I want to make sure we have room for them because they're in the best position to decide, you know what, I got to say goodbye to the Palisades and then we can welcome them in Beverly Hills. And I know a handful of those families.
And I think the best course of action is what is happening is people reaching out and wanting to help, because I think that there is a lot of people that are very anxious and making decisions that impact kids, and just to move them and find them a place really may not be in their best interest, because moving them from that friend group for such a short time until they get their established
Temporary
setup,
site, yeah.
then that's moving kids back. So it is about not just coming in and signing a document. It's really about having a conversation about options and the impact that on that student, because to be able to, especially at the high school level, to have somebody come in, evaluate that transcript. There are different graduation requirements. There's different classes, and then we're in the middle of the year. And so some classes at some schools are a year-long class, some are a semester. So that evaluation process that happens at the counselor level is extensive. And then to make a short-term decision, and if it's from the parent or from the student or both, because they just want to get settled, people do make those decisions because of the unknown. They don't know what's happening here. But what's really going to be detrimental to us is doing this process and then them getting established, and then, but my friends are there, and then they leave. And then there's kind of this wake along the way that impacts a lot of people. It's just not what's best for kids. It's really, I would encourage people to really, as they're trying to put pieces back together, is it's a bigger decision than just, a place, just moving a student to a location.
I'd love to second that, because my own niece, who is, I believe, 10, she lost her home completely. She goes to Marquez, so she lost her home.
Sorry.
She's lost her school in the last 7 days. She was over at our house about 4 or 5 days ago, and the resiliency of this child was remarkable. And the number one thing that she took away to keep just any kind of smile on her face was she knew she was going to go back to a school with her friends.
Yes.
Yep, well, that's
That
kids.
meant everything.
That makes sense.
Yep.
And I think to kind of
chills.
make a left turn in a different topic, perhaps there's a way here, not to put more on your plate, Dr. Breggy, because you have a lot, but I think there's also an educational service that we might be able to provide to other families, to where they might see us as the geographical saving grace or something. But if we can continue communication with our partners, and our neighbors, we can educate a family to say, hey, this school over here has more room.
Right.
And you
Right.
can talk to your friends and get a few people, so you don't lose that continuity. Because if we start breaking up kids, into brand new, school systems where they have, know no one, and, mid-year, it can really
They will
be
not be
so
happy.
mentally detrimental, not only losing everything, but losing their friends that were
Peers.
closest to them.
Yep.
So I think there's an educational side for us to be able to learn more about those openings, to be able to guide families to say, hey, we love you and we want you to be here if we can help you, but here's an opening here that has 30, 40 spots, we can guide you down this road too.
Right, but what I was saying is if Cavallo is not being particularly cooperative, and I'm not saying he isn't, but if that has not been his priority, and more so, he's just going to go straight with the order, I don't know if those schools, I don't know how habitable some of those schools are, or how feasible it is. You know, they may have just the same growing pains as we would. It's hard to say, but at the same time, if they are schools that are relatively close to them, then, I mean, a long time ago, I decided, am I going to do private school or going to do public school? And one of the benefits of public school is that the friends live in the neighborhood. And that's incredible, because there were so many times I didn't have to drive them because they'd take their bike over. So there are a lot of benefits for to attend a school that is near where your home is. So, yeah, that's just another
I
consideration.
mean, what's being discussed, this is more than a transactional decision. And for some that are scraping for some normalcy in their life, because they can't get their head around what happened so quickly, is, more than, and I hear what you're saying about really being in touch with some families as they come in, and it's less about the check the box here and sign here, as it is that let's talk about your situation, because it is really different whether somebody's coming in as a senior or they're coming in as a freshman. Everybody's story is a little bit different, and so it's to get some individual attention with some families coming in to kind of have that conversation about, that particular, that student, where they were going, and less about just trying to complete a registration, because we really want what's best for every student.
I think that I just ask you one more time, Mrs. Collins-Williams, please be sure that the people whose homes you're visiting, who are setting up the beds, are going to be living there 5 nights a week. Please, because the kids know what the other kids are doing, and then the kids go home and they report it back to their parents. So-and-so is saying that she's living at grandma's guest house, and that's not what is happening. And it becomes much harder to undo something once it's done. And then we, as a district, have to spend time and dollars on investigation and so on, and then we also are losing the confidence of our community. Thank you.
And one thing we've talked about is, this is an area that we need to put some focus on as far as some additional staffing enforcement, and that's notwithstanding this incident. Like, we've had some conversations over the years that this
Since
is an
August.
area that we need to enforce. And what we're doing is very good in many cases, but now it's even more emphasis to make sure that we have that responsibility to our community to make sure that this is being handled appropriately. I know that where I live, I see several of our staff coming into my own building and checking and ensuring enrollment in that to make sure I live, So, but that happens often where I'll run into somebody, because a lot of times that's done after hours.
And
We as board members get calls from members of the community saying, we know that that person is not, those kids are not living there, and it's very hard when a person goes out and there's a toy and a dress or a few dresses in the closet or something. They say they're living there, but the kids are telling them that they're living. I mean, it's very difficult to prove sometimes
It
that
is.
they're not where they say they are, or where they're, and then, of course, the people come to us and they say to us, well, you're not doing your job because you're allowing this to happen. And it's not that we aren't allowing it, we just are having a hard time in investigating and proving it. And it's very, very difficult.
But when it's brought up, then we check again.
Well, I
And
know
so
that, and
it's-
again, they go out there and they're ready for you. I mean, I know, because we used to hire somebody, as you remember,
Yep.
somebody that was an investigator that would go out and follow kids from the school to where they would go right after school, and who would pick them up, and so on. So I do know that I know it's very hard to prove, and unfortunately, once, like someone just said, I believe you said, it's very hard to undo it. I mean, once they get there in the door, it's very hard to find
Well,
out. I mean,
actually,
I
that piece is-
remember acting once an assistant principal, having to hand a letter to a child, take this home to your mother, saying, we know you don't live there and you don't belong in school
do
here.
that.
And on Friday, it's your last day.
We do that.
Right, so that's what I was going to talk about, is that there is a process, and it is backed by Ed Code and everything else, and we do have a process. We have to be fair and then allow the parent some time to re-enroll their student in the district where they live in, but we do have a process to disenroll them from the district if we are sure they are not living here, and we do follow that, and we have disenrolled students under that process this year and last year, and in previous years.
And if those students that you find do not actually live in that address that they're co-residing, and it's in an address that another student at our school or at BHUSD they're sharing that residence, is there consequences for that student who actually goes to our BHUSD facilities?
It wouldn't be for the student, but it'd be conversation with the parent.
So to sum it up, if you have lost your home and you would like to come to Beverly Hills Unified School District and you can demonstrate that loss, then BHUSD can and would be the school for your student. Is that correct?
Well, are we taking into consideration
I'm
whether
just
there's
reiterating.
room?
Well,
No, I'm just reiterating. If somebody is homeless
They've
and
lost
they
their
want to
home.
come to this school district, it's the law.
The one caveat and the one thing, or one of several things that we've spoken about is, the bargaining units and the teachers' agreement about, the cap. And then I was looking at the order, and it said something like, bargaining units are encouraged to accommodate. So does that mean then, because even though it says encourage, which is a softer word, because this is coming down from the governor as an order, is it really to be read as waive all bargaining units ratio numbers because I'm telling you, you got to
Yeah, and
accommodate? I don't know.
this is
I
where,
only see the word, I only see the main word there is encouraged.
Like urged.
Right. So I'm wondering.
And I don't know.
But there's some
that's
inconsistency
something that
here because-
Dr. Breggy has mentioned that we've already reached out to the BHEA on this particular subject, I believe, about.
Dr.
started
Horvath just had a
conversation.
conversation today,
Is
but
that correct, Dr. Horvath?
there's just some inconsistencies with, some of the language
Yeah,
in here,
there is.
which is,
Sometimes it
again, this
sounds
is why
obligated
it's
and
all
other
like
times-
PTSD
Also,
to
too,
COVID.
just the language of homeless.
Yes.
How many people are actually legitimately homeless versus either A, don't physically have that home anymore.
Right.
But they're staying in a hotel, they're with a
Right.
friend, they've managed to purchase another place. I don't know how many of these people are literally on Burton Way, in a tent.
Right.
But there's a lot.
Homeless
What's the
versus
specific law
displaced.
on that one?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a definition of
And I'm
what-
sorry, but you emailed it to us, I believe. So I'm sorry that I don't have it with me.
For which the,
The homeless law.
what unhoused
yes.
means, or?
yes,
Yeah.
it's the,
It's very particular.
yes, and it's the McKinney, it's the,
McKinney-Vento, yes.
Yeah, that's right. McKinney-Vento.
Which I doubt any of these people qualify under that particular guidance.
That's what I'm saying.
Correct.
yeah, that's the law all the time.
Right, and we follow that all the time.
But that, if I understand the McKinley-Vento law or act, isn't that only applying to your immediate LEA? So in other words, if you become unhoused, but you don't live in Pacific Palisades, but you live somewhere else, then it requires, though, that the school that you're zoned for cannot turn you away? Or does it mean any school has to honor, I don't know.
But if you don't
It's
have a house,
where
you're not
it's-
zoned.
Right, it's where you are homeless. So as, I forget who said it earlier, if you park your car,
Me, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we do have
And-
homeless students.
Wow. Okay,
And-
so it's where you are dwelling outside of a house, and
right, if
then
you're
that,
living in your car in Culver City,
then that school district must honor you.
Culver City
Right.
would need to enroll you. Now, there are processes and procedures. There's a form, there's a questionnaire that families are requested to complete when they claim that they're homeless, that ask questions like, where are you sleeping? How many nights are you sleeping there? That type of thing. The other thing is that it's not indefinite. Like, for example, if you're living in a hotel because you're displaced because something happened in your home, then at that point you have a domicile. So there are different pieces, but just strictly the definition of unhoused is you don't have permanent or temporary shelter on a consistent basis, and that it is wherever you are unhoused. The area that you're unhoused in needs to enroll you.
And I know that for those students who want to come to BHUSD, they're going to most likely request a tour of our facilities or school to see if it fits for them. So would we like have to be obligated to give them that tour and like pull more of our staff away from their other responsibilities to give that tour to those students?
I think we're very open to when people want a tour and people want. I think that at this point, and it is tough on staffing, but I'd rather families talk to us rather than just say, "Look, I'm gonna push through. Where do I sign?" Like, talk to us. As educators, we have a lot to add and a lot to share, and maybe could point out things that a family might not be thinking about as far as like. A transcript at the high school and what this might look like for a university who is, somebody who's at a school and then you transfer a school and then you transfer back because you want to be back with your friends. And, that gives us the opportunity to have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Like the semester versus year course classes, or like
Right.
the different requirements our school has, especially if it's a senior coming to our school and then they
Exactly.
stay for the remainder of the year, and then for them graduating at our school with those prerequisites of they have to take that finance course or the algebra course that wasn't a prerequisite from their former high school, is that going to correlate to ours and make it harder for that student to take extra courses and so on?
Right, and that's why having the conversation, because our graduation requirements are differently, and and again, there could be an impact, and this is why it's so situational. But somebody that doesn't then meet our requirements, and then they come back and they're a fifth-year senior, and then that has. I'm just saying, like that then
exactly what
has.
Remy's saying.
So
Yeah,
that will have an impact on then our overall rating to have that
Yeah,
50.
exactly.
So we are. Like, it's sleepless nights trying to make sure that we want everyone to be where they need to be and have a home and to have a school. But we're also trying to look out for, what we have in place, what we've established here.
What type of things do you believe might be coming down the pipeline from the state level or the county level within a day or two that might nullify a lot of what we're talking about, or immediately change the pieces that we're trying to shift around to make sense? Could another updated executive order with more clarity might throw everything we're talking about right now out the window?
Yeah, it could. I think I think that instead of throwing it out the window, I think we're hoping that there's just more support in that area and some more clarity around certain areas. So, like the encouraged pieces, and and then saying, we encourage you to meet with your bargaining representatives, but then it also says that, we're suspending the class sizes, so there's some inconsistency in the language. But what we're hoping is that now that we have a dialogue going, that, certainly they listen and then they come back. So I'll know that tomorrow when I have my next meeting, and to see who is listening. The funding piece, I know that Dr. Hasty and I have both been very aggressive about ensuring that, we are not a small group, and, we have a voice, and it's, we're going to not go away in the middle of the night. We have an obligation to our district too, to ensure that we keep our funding where it is.
I guess what I mean by that is just to finish off on that one thought, is that because of the meeting happening right now at City Hall, you have potential windfall of people. And yeah, I mean, not everyone who lived in the Palisades was wealthy, but obviously there's a number of people that are,
Sure.
that do have the means to buy a home, instantly, or rent a nice apartment here.
We've seen
which
it
could-
happen here.
Exactly. So that could literally change the 25 people that you have on your list right now could literally be 100
But the
by
di-
Monday.
But the difference is they're residents.
Sure, but I guess I meant by like the staffing, or sorry,
Right.
like the class sizes and
Sure.
all that could, like automatically be totally impacted, where on the executive order, it's kind of saying, well, your class sizes are thrown out as long as they fit this criteria.
Right.
But that's not talking about the residential criteria.
Exactly.
Which doesn't fall under the executive order.
Right, right. Which is, if anything, it's coming at a good time if it's ever going to happen, because we are now evaluating, we're already starting to plan for next year. So as we're doing course registrations so if these are going to be families that are going to start to matriculate in, that we're already preparing for what that staffing is going to look like for next year. So if anything, this is at least a decent timing that, if this gets approved through the city, then, they're not going to be here in a week or two. It'll probably happen over time as we're preparing for next year. So if it's going to happen, this is actually a good time that that's going to happen.
So, looking ahead,
Well, I think that at this point, I think we know that we're getting requests. We know that they're being evaluated according to some of the things that, where they are, who they are, and where they're living, and so on. And so each is on an individual basis, and then, of course, it comes down to, do we have room? And that seems to be a major concern. So at this point, I think we sort of have to monitor what's going on. We just can't make any kind of, I think it's going to be a daily monitoring of the program and what we're going to be able to do. I don't know if anybody else has any feeling about that, but I think that knowing that I just was surprised that when walking up to the school, I was told that we had 37, maybe it's more now, I don't know, people who've come to the school since Monday.
Wow, really?
To try to enroll their kids, and especially with the new governor's
Order.
edict there. I think there has to be more clarity on exactly what it is that we have or can and cannot do based on our own situation. And I don't know if I think that we all are pretty much agreeing that it is based on what you're saying, that the numbers and every person that comes, you're trying to determine, are they homeless? Did they lose their home? Or are they, because they no longer can go to Pali, but they don't live in Palisades? I think there's a lot of questions here. And then, from that standpoint, I would like to know something about the communication that goes out to our community, because I think that has been a big issue with the people who say, like, maybe we're heartless. I mean, I'm getting the feeling that people think that we don't care, or with that. I think that's another thing that needs to be treated, because, gosh. that's the last thing
And
the
we're
world
pushing
can-
that out. So we're very public about, sharing and welcoming. We were the first school district to reach out to Palisades Charter High School.
did Tuesday night.
And that we were the first district to do it, and they acknowledged that, and they were in here, and they again used meeting space. We want to be able to help schools get back on their feet, and so working with our PTAs and PTSA to we have a goal that we want to, because so many people want to help, and people are telling us, we don't need socks, we don't need shoes, we don't need clothes. We need, we want to replace full libraries. We want to help schools get back to have every resource that they had before. And that's a great way for us to help get people back to where they are with their friend group, where they're used to going to school, where they want to go to school, and many are just worried that they're not going to have those resources. So we're working with Christy Bradbury, who's a former employee, who is also an author. She's reached out to her 100 authors, and so we've gotten lists from schools, we've said, who have lost everything, and we've said, give us your database of what's in your library. This used to be a library for Hawthorne Elementary. we could produce a list, just like every school can. This is what's gone. And for those schools that lost every single book, we want to replace every single book. And they're on Amazon. And so the communication that's going out is really the opposite of, like, we want to help. And this is a community that wants to help. So we are pushing that out. And there's going to be other ideas as well.
I have one right now that came in today to me from a woman who's a fourth grade teacher in a school in Palisades. They've lost everything. They have now relocated. They found a place, but they said, well, what did Hawthorne do with all the equipment, the chairs, the desks, and so on? Are those available for us? I sent that on to you today. I
just got it before we started this meeting. And so we do have some.
I mean, we can reach out. I'm
We
saying
do.
we
Yep.
can help in so many ways, and it doesn't necessarily mean always taking another student, but it does mean that we care and we are willing to support you in any way we can.
I think we could do that and also make some room available in the Horace Mann garage.
Yeah, that's where I think I've seen.
Should we expect, our first official meeting of the year is on Tuesday, January 28th. So something tells me that this is going to be on our agenda, and we likely will be hearing some kind of update at that point.
Absolutely,
if
but I will give
applicable.
you, I feel like this is going to be, again, and I promised I would like never keep using the word COVID, but you know, my responsibility is to update you more, it's, if not every day, every other day, just so that you know who's coming, where are they going, so that we have an idea of like what that does to the system. Like, where are we and how can we support kids? And that's my obligation to you, is to share that information so that you know, as we are progressing, where kids are going, you know, and what that looks like, and I will do that for you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has any further comment? If not,
I just have one closing sort of thought that I've had, and that is that, you know, helping out people who've been displaced, it's never seamless, and it's never, you know, it's not that the expectation is that, wow, we're going to have a bunch of people, it's just going to be easy, and there's no kinks. I just want to say that, and I think all of us are in agreement, that when you sign up to help others, you go in knowing that this is not a perfect situation. I mean, the fact that there was a tragedy to begin with is horrific, but the fact that we are trying to make, I want to say, a makeshift plan, we go in understanding that there is no perfect solution at this point. The perfect solution would be to turn back time where they're back at their school. So with that in mind, we all have to accept that there is serious growing pains and a lot of decisions, but I think at this point, the community should know that our hearts are in the right place and we want to make it work, but we don't want to sow the seeds of further problems down the road because we didn't foresee something that was going to happen. But at the same time, I just remind, you know, for all those people who've put up people who have been displaced, I'm sure, you know, like you did, Ms. Menasheri, you know, within a moment's notice, you had to find bedding for them, whatever. It wasn't perfect. You probably wanted to vacuum a little more or whatever, but the point is that the heart is in the right place. And that's where we are as a district. We just need to work it out so that there are not logistical and operational problems that cause further difficulties for any students, ours or others.
Yep, and I would say the group I've heard the most from is, as far as wanting to help, is from our teachers, and many of our teachers that have been impacted. So I, you know, just want that to be really clear too, that nobody's saying no, nobody's saying, you know, you can't do that. No one is doing that. You know, every single person is saying, how can we help? So that's, you know, we are not coming to you saying we have a problem, a bargaining problem. We have now a group of employees that are really reaching out and wanting to help, and nobody wants to be in this situation. But our teachers and our employees that don't live here, that have been in impacted areas, are really the ones that are saying, even people that have had to leave are the first to say, what can we do? Because I know what that feels like.
But I mean, in closing, just to kind of trying to piggyback on what Dr. Stern said, I think it's also not heartless to say that we also need to look at things through the lens of what's best for our current students.
Absolutely.
Ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dr. Breggy, do we have any teachers who have lost their homes?
So we do have a couple of staff that lost their home. I did send something to the board. We have a couple of staff that have lost everything, so.
Everything.
Yep.
So, I mean,
You have some.
I mean, of
Yes.
course, we want to respect their privacy, but I think that our community would want to know, should that staff member want help? I mean, I'll let you and Dr. Horvath figure out what is the right response there.
Through our Rotary, I shared that information with our Rotary because we're, as Rotarians, we're also working to raise some money and.
Yeah, on Sunday is the Rotarian
Yes.
Drive, and that'll be good, and that's kind of, I think, everybody has given bags and bags, you know, of things that they had in their home in good condition, and now Rotary is trying to do more underwear, pajamas, a little bit more of the necessities that people need, and so I'm thankful for them. And they're meeting, where is it, by
The firehouse.
fire station?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
midday on Sunday.
Yep.
Fire station across from Kelly's.
And I
fire
think
station
that
next to City Hall.
with our own staff, it's really, I personally think that the key thing is, what do they need
Yeah,
individually?
that's
Because
what
I
I'm
think
asking.
people want to help and they keep, you know, like, I think that they need is not the right way to go. It's what do you need? And so we've been doing a lot of that as a district, because not just for this natural disaster and tragedy that we can't even comprehend, on a daily basis we do that when we have medical emergencies and a fire just within, you know, one home. We do that here, and we took a different approach because we used to do that too, where we would just go out and ensure that we got them what we thought that they needed. And what we have found is we just ask that, what do you need? What is the because we want to make sure what it is that we're doing, they actually need.
Okay, will you let us know?
Sure.
Too?
I mean, it would be nice to know if we could get some idea what specifically we're talking about, so
Sure.
that we can, you know, focus on those items, rather than just picking things out of helter-skelter. We
Agreed.
actually can zero in, and we may be able to fulfill some of those needs. I know I could.
Yes, I think that's great.
Thank you. And
Sure.
I am sorry to that family or those families. That's heartbreaking.
Awful.
Any further discussion? If not, meeting is adjourned. We will be meeting again on
28th.
the 28th, a regular board meeting, and thank you for being so available today.
Thank you.
Thank you.